You're on.
Go through them. As they said. Steve?
We had a question last week from Councillor John about the how would we propose to deal with consensus places? So
Sure.
is there a plan in place for that?
Okay, and you mean the question we had at MCC?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure. So what I have said up to this point is that there is a problem with surplus places in the Monmouth cluster. So overall, Monmouth primary schools have too many empty places and not enough children enrolling in them. But what we need to do, and there is no set strategy yet, but what we need to do is consider how we're going to address that. And one of the things I wanted to do was for you as a town council to have a discussion with me where we see what your ideas are. You know your local schools well, you know, this is your area. So I kind of would be interested to know what your approach is and what your thoughts are on how we might address it. One of the things I've said I think is important is building more houses. So you might know the county council's got a replacement local development plan coming forward, which will involve more social and affordable housing being built in around our towns across the county. Now I would hope that that would assist with more young families and more young couples moving to or being able to stay around here, which would help enrolment numbers. Anything else? I mean, that's my starting point. I don't have a pre-written solution for you at this point. I'm going to pretend that I do. Sure.
The issue of surplus places and obviously the costs associated with it.
Yeah.
Is the problem more a case of the staffing costs in schools with surplus places, the buildings and facilities, or effectively a combination of the two? What is the greatest problem here?
Well, you're probably the one for that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll take that as a technical question. So the issue of surplus places is that in essence, we fund schools related to the number of pupils that are there. If you have a significant contraction in the number of pupils, obviously the funding reduces. And in light of that, schools have to take decisions about how they manage their classing structure. So you often see then as schools either contract or expand, but not at the necessary rate, that schools have to go to things like mixed class sizes. So you might find yourself in a position rather than what we've typically had in Monmouthshire, which is a class per year group, you might find yourself in merged classes. So years reception 1, and then a blend of 1, 2. So it becomes much more, the structure of the school becomes changed in quite a significant way. It's not as efficient for us to run a school like that, which is a consideration. And our legal responsibility is to require the adequacy and the sufficiency and the efficiency of our delivery. So it's that class staffing structure that is the main operational aspect. And to be perfectly frank, it doesn't go down very well with parents. They don't like mixed age classes. There are often quite a lot of tensions. If you're placed in the upper half of a class working up, then parents see that's a good thing. If you're in the lower half looking down, then parents can see that as a negative thing. It's not as positive for teachers themselves. Mixed age groups are quite difficult to teach. So it's much better if we can hold that position of having one class per year group. The other thing, of course, is that our schools are typically designed for one class, 1 year group. So, you know, they have 7 classrooms, a hall, and so on. So if you're then finding yourself where half of the school isn't used or a significant portion isn't used, then there are questions around how we fund the use of the building and so on. So there's a lot tied up, and it's not just about having fewer classes and us funding more. It's this piece around how you actually operationalise mixed year groups. And in the most extreme cases, we had a school, actually, Clantogo, at the minute it's a very small school. So, well, it's not a very small school, but for us it's a small school. We had one in Clanfire-Kilgedin. It had 2 classes, 25 children, 12 in what was used to be referred to as the foundation phase and 13 in what was Key Stage 2. So it's very difficult then, but we're not talking about anywhere like those numbers in Monmouth, but it's that structure of the school that becomes problematic. Okay.
Any more? Councillor Hammond.
Yes, I've got a question for Councillor Wright, if I may, please. Councillor Wright, I understand there was a statutory consultation listed on the Cabinet Planner. Not on there until July the 25th. Could you explain why the leader of Monmouth County Council, Councillor Brocklesby, said there was not a plan to close Kymin View School.
Because there wasn't.
When
There
there was,
wasn't.
that information appears to have been contradicted.
Can I ask at what point does a can I ask at what point does a proposal become a plan then? Because there was
Does a
clearly
proposal
proposed.
become a plan?
Yeah, so at what point does that change from a proposal to a plan? If we're talking about, because it seems to me it's a matter of wording here. But what point does that change?
So,
Yeah.
so when we're working our way through any kind of process like this, there will be a range of proposals that we will develop as officers. The plan is enacted once we have gone through Cabinet and asked Cabinet for their permission to consult on a range of options, for which one of them will be go forward as our preferred option. One of the things which is quite convoluted about the school organisation scheme that we have to work to is it has 3 touch points with the Cabinet. So the first one is when we ask permission to consult. So we ask permission formally to consult with local communities, nearby schools, the statutory agencies. And at that point, we put forward a series of options, one of which is our preferred option. Having done that consultation, we come back to Cabinet again, and at that Cabinet meeting, we then report on the consultation and the balance of feedback that we've had from the various agencies. Having heard that, we then make a recommendation to Cabinet about whether they should go ahead and publish what we know as statutory notices. At that point, statutory notices are published, and you'll see kind of written notices published on a school building or any other building. And that will be the resolution of what we're seeking to achieve. So if it's to maintain or continue or desist, that has another period of time. And then depending on the feedback that we get through from that period of consultation, it comes back a third time to Cabinet, and Cabinet then enact that decision. So proposals are widespread at the beginning. The plan is only enacted once we've asked permission and permission has been granted by Cabinet.
Okay.
My concern, sorry, is if we start saying a proposal and equals a plan, then it becomes very difficult for either officers or for councillors to say, well, what do you think of these ideas? Like, if I would come and ask you, okay, I've got maybe 1, 2, maybe several ideas, what do you think of them? And then the one of them gets picked out and presented as that's what the councillor wanted to do, or that's what the plan going ahead was. It then becomes impossible for me or other people to come and float ideas with you or to really gather opinions from people if that is then going to be either misunderstood or misrepresented as being far more of a concrete suggestion than it was. Does that make sense?
Can I just
Yeah.
come back, Chair? Can I just on one point? One of the things which is difficult is that according to the school organisation code, when we take forward the papers, we must come forward with one proposal, a preferred option. There are only 3 things that can happen when we consult on that proposal. The first is that it's accepted and the balance of views in the community and the various institutions agree with it. The second is it's taken forward but with minor tweaks. And the third is that it's not taken forward and you have to restart the whole process. So it's really important as we're building up to taking forward a formal process of consultation around a school, that actually we have a good level of confidence that something is going to be taken forward. Because you lose so much time in working through the consultation process, taking things through Cabinet every time you do it. And there's not the opportunity to go with an open set of proposals. So in other instances, if you were to test the market, say around something in procurement, you might just say, we're looking for this. And you'd have an opportunity for people to come forward with a whole range of different solutions. We can't do that. We have to take one forward. So there's quite a lot of risk in terms of the officer time, in terms of how we take forward a proposal through that way.
I'm going to go to Councillor Brahimi and then going to go to Councillor Lucas and then Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of like a twofold question, so I apologise for that. The first is, I don't know what the size of the classes are in Monmouth, do you? And secondly, is there financial flexibility to reduce class sizes to say 20, where we know that children actually learn far better than if you've got a class of, say, 35.
So Will has the numbers for us.
Yeah.
Numbers.
Yeah, so at the moment, across the Monmouth cluster, all of the schools are running with a surplus of places. The lowest is Usk, with 6.4% surplus. The highest is Kymin View at 39.5%. That's as of our last PLAS data, which was the audit. So the classes, if we take the Kymin View just as the example, there is 127 children on roll. They will be across 7 classes. They might not fall uniformly, but that's where they fall. In terms of,
Or classes is what you're saying, they are already. So.
yeah, they might have taken some decisions about how they structure their classes to make that more efficient. So we will fund top up to a certain point to make sure that the classes fall as most efficiently as they can. The point around small classes is you've got to find the optimum point. Some children will learn better in small classes. Some teachers, because the resources will work really well across a class of 30. 30 is where we have to aim to. There are 1 or 2 instances where we breach the class size. That's if children move into an area, potentially they've got additional learning needs or they were children looked after, then we will breach the class size for them, and that's within the regulations. But basically we aim for 30 is what we're aiming for. The costs associated with going down means that because you're funding smaller classes in certain places, it means there's not as much money to go around elsewhere. So there's an equity question around how we fund the whole of the system as well. Okay.
Councillor Hoggins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was working under this apprehension, I suppose. When you talk about surplus places, I was thinking of empty classrooms. And perhaps it is, but the fundamental issue is lack of funding, isn't it? Ultimately, because that's why you're talking about blended classes or going for the optimum of 30. So really, and I hadn't realised that, and it hadn't sunk home then early enough that that's where the point actually lies. But then you spoke about classes of 18. So presumably it exists in some places. I suppose you did explain that. You said it's because that part is shared thinner.
Yes.
Yeah. So are there other towns, regions, whatever you mentioned with those, are there other places where it's surface places?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the other, and we mentioned this when I present a Chief Officer's report to County Council every year. So there is a Chepstow. We've got an issue with surplus places. It's not as significant in Abergavenny or in Caldecott. And looking forward, it's not expected to be as significant in those two, and that's largely around housing developments. But yeah, it exists everywhere. And Welsh Government have a line, it's around 25%, you really do need to take action. And you should look for about 10 to 15%. So you should be carrying. So when people move into areas, families relocate and so on, that you can have that space to allow children to go to the school where they live, which is hopefully what all of our children do. But it is challenging for us. It's about managing the lodge, sorry.
If I may, you talk with the process really, and the proposals, various proposals, ultimately one proposal and the options there. So I sort of understand how that works. But what stage are we at the moment in terms of proposals or putting proposals together, or where are we?
Well, to be honest, early in the process, because I think this is before I was the Cabinet Member for Education, because I've only been doing it, a few months now, since May. But kind of, as I understand it, please correct me if I get this wrong, but we have to formulate, the officers will formulate and the Cabinet will work together to formulate some possible options and proposals. Now, those were shown to MCC councillors, and basically I think their feeling was that none of the above, they didn't like them. So for example, when this proposal, should we just close Kymin View, when it was shown to councillors, they didn't like it. It came to Cabinet, Cabinet said, well, that's not going to fly then, because this is the kind of the democratic feeling is that they're not happy with this proposal. So it wasn't progressed past that point. But that does mean we are going to have to go back and think of some alternatives, revisit what the solution could be, which is kind of why I said it'd be great if I could come here and have some time that we could all have a more open discussion around, well, what do you think the solutions are? Because that's where I'd like to start with this, rather than me saying, I've had an idea, what do you reckon? It'd be good if you could share your ideas with me. Yeah, so it's early, but I'm happy to come back here and let's think about it. Yeah.
And we, just to build on what Councillor Wright has said, we did have a session with school staff, governors and leaders in Overmono towards the end of the summer term to begin that engagement with those stakeholders to understand what, I guess is the fairly cliche term, the art of the possible.
Councillor Lucas, I'm conscious of time, okay, so I am wrapping this up shortly. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. Evening both. Sorry, my internet doesn't hold out if I put the camera on. So thank you for clarifying that there was such a proposal put forward to us and that you took it back, and it wasn't you, Councillor Wright, I know, but that it did exist and it did get removed. So going forward, as you've already identified, and I appreciate actually the idea of coming forward to the town council to inform us all. So I think that's a very good positive step forward. So I'm just wondering, now that we've actually answered some of my questions whilst you were talking to the others, but I'd just like to say thank you for that, and also just to make everybody aware it was actually there. Okay, so thank you very much.
I sense a little bit of mischief there, Jane. I think covering some of the same ground as we perhaps did on Thursday last week.
Yes, but you've covered it, so I just brought it up. So thank you very much.
I hope we've also clarified the difference between a proposal and a plan. They are materially different things.
Yeah,
I'm going to go to.
There you go. Thank you.
I'm conscious of time, so it's, the councillors who've had a say, they've had a say. I'm not going to come back to any others. I'm going to finish with Councillor Newell.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Evening, Councillor Wright. It's nice to see you again. Your former, the chap that was in your position before you took the role on recently, Councillor Martin Grucock, emailed my colleague, Richard John, saying that there was this plan that we could enter into a public consultation on the closure of Kymin View. I've got the email here stated the 12th of February 2025, together with the slides. And if members, my colleagues at Town Council want to see it, my new colleague Xavier Turner has done a Freedom of Information request, and he has copies of those slides that happily he'll share around. So I'm so grateful that you've come to the Town Council meeting, because your predecessor did not. And in the spirit, we really want to work with you and sort out these excess school places. But I really would appreciate, if you could, in the spirit of working together, that the comments that were chucked at Xavier during this recent campaign and at myself by certain not council representatives, but members of the public.
Councillor Newell,
I come to my question. My question is,
Councillor Newell,
could you apologise to Xavier for the way he was treated, please, during the recent campaign? Thank you, Laura, and I hope you're well.
Well, only if it's Councillor Wright that would be willing to, but if it wasn't Councillor Wright that was.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was asked by the chair if it's appropriate, and I think the point is it depends on whether it was the right place, whether it's you are the right person to offer an apology. I would suggest this is becoming political, and we are not a political organisation. And maybe in the election, Councillor Newell, if you can just bear with us a moment, please.
Absolutely. Sorry, Chair.
The points you are making are political. They came from an election and are not relevant. So I'm sure Councillor Turner will happily meet with Councillor Wright afterwards if that's what he would like to do.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can all would welcome the open discussion about the surplus schools. But the point of this was to discuss, to have an up-to-date update about the Kymin View discussion, and I think it's been made quite clear by Councillor Wright that yes, a plan was put out there, proposal was put out there, but not converted into a plan. And I think ultimately that is, as a council, the message you should be putting out to the constituents now to reassure them that this is not something that will be happening in the immediate future.
Thank you, Clark.
think-
Just to, sorry, Chair. Thank you, Clark. Just to confirm what I was saying in the spirit of everyone working together. And I thank you for clearing that up for the clerk. But yes, in the spirit of everyone working together. Thank you for the clarification.
Right, I'm going to come to Councillor Curtin as he hasn't spoken, and then I'm shutting this bit of
Can I
the.
just make one
Yes, of
comment?
course.
In terms of the slides that were shared, again, I kind of bring you back to, this was a closed member seminar where it was a floating of, here's a proposal, what do you think of the idea? So yeah, of course those slides exist because the idea was put to councillors for feedback, but that's what they are. That was the limit of it. It really was. We thought of something, what do you think? Give me your opinion. Okay, it's not, it's a no-go. But that's, again, if we can't do that, then the whole decision-making process, in my opinion, falls apart. It becomes completely undemocratic. But there should be a reasonable space, I think, for us to be able to show slides to councillors, for example, you know?
Right, okay. Now I am wrapping up. Everybody's got 4 minutes. I've got Councillor Curtin and Councillor
Apologies.
Evans. They haven't spoken, and I'm
Chair.
cutting off at 8 o'clock, so at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Chair.
4 minutes.
I'll come back to the topic on hand rather than all the other random comments. I think the problem is, and thank you, Councillor Wright, I think part of the problem is, yes, housing is always kind of, it leaks into other areas as it does with this. But I think it's worth bearing in mind, sadly, I don't have any ideas because I myself don't have children for the very reasons I'm going to mention. You know, I was just looking at some statistics. Apparently in 2024 was the all-time lowest birth rates in England and Wales on record. So I think it's a UK-wide thing, and it stipulates the reasons behind it: cost of living crisis, people delaying parenthood, economic uncertainty. You know, there's all these other factors that isn't just housing. So I think sadly it's not an idea for me, but it's just, I think it's worth understanding that it's not just housing that's needed, because what's affordable is one of those nebulous things. You know, it's like everyone can say it's affordable, but doesn't mean you can still afford it. I know I can't afford a house. And, you know, and I think there are many other people like myself that will most probably never have children because of the costs implicated with it. So I think it's something that needs to be grabbed by the horns. I don't know how, but I think not just Monmouthshire, but all parts of the UK are struggling with it and will continue, and it will only get worse as the younger populations diminish and we all become older, I think, you know. But yeah, sorry, I have no answers, Laura, but yeah, I think it's a really complicated thing.
I think that the holistic social change required to address the birth rate is a bit beyond my brief.
Indeed, yes, I wouldn't.
Thank you, Councillor Curtin. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, very briefly. So there's 2 points. One is that we have agreed planning for 50 new residential units in Wisham. Hopefully that will start pulling families in, and we have a presentation from the developer in very near future. The second thing, with regards to proposals and plans, and completely relevant, we sat down, we had 32 different designs for the landing gear on A380. Those were proposals. We weren't going to take 32 of them ahead. Eventually we had to zero down until we get to the one thing, which becomes the plan that you then work to. So yes, I understand that it's not hair splitting, it's about what the process is behind decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. And I'd like to thank you both so much for coming today.
No
Thank you. And we would welcome you back at any point to do a consultation and explore solutions that perhaps all of us can think about.
Just invite me, and assuming it was my diary, I'll be there, but I will definitely be back. If you would like me to be, then
Absolutely.
I'll be back.
Thank you.
Right, lovely.
I propose that we reinstate the standing orders, seconded by Councillor Evans, and can have a show of hands. Thank you. Moving on to part